All right, so does red meat or processed meats cause cancer? Now, I'm really not interested in knowing what people out in the middle of the street say. I mean, I want to know what the clinical data shows us. I mean, what has been proven in a clinical trial? And I've been doing some reading, and I'm going to share with you exactly what I found. Now, as with all my videos, this is for educational purposes only. I am not providing any medical advice. All right, so before we get started, I recommend that you find this video within my channel where I discuss some general information about vitamins, but more importantly, I go over the different types of clinical trials that we use in medicine, namely observational trials and randomized trials, and the difference between both. And I really think that this part is pertinent to this video. All right, so let's start off talking about the different types of meats, starting off with processed meat. And this is considered any meat that is preserved by either salting, curing, or any other process to enhance its flavor and or extend its shelf life. Now, just know some examples of these include bacon, hot dogs, sausages, deli meat like ham, salami, pepperoni, also corned beef and beef jerky. Now, the different types of red meat include beef, pork, lamb, veal, goat, and horse. And that's right, you heard it right. Pork is on this list, so I was surprised too. And believe it or not, the definition of a red meat is depending its level of myoglobin. So any meat that is rich in myoglobin is considered red meat. And that's right, pork does have a lot of myoglobin. Now, beef has more so, but pork has enough myoglobin to be considered red meat. All right, so these are the questions that we really want answered, and these include, does red meat and or processed meats cause cancer, and what does the data show us? So let's get into it. So back in 2015 and 2020, the International Agency for Research on Cancer, known as the IARC, revealed that there is evidence linking processed and red meat to colorectal cancer. Now, colorectal cancer is cancer of the colon and rectum. And the conclusion was that there is enough evidence to classify processed meat as a group 1 carcinogen and red meat into a group 2A carcinogen. All right, now keeping those groups in mind, let's go over the 4 IARC carcinogen groups. And these include group 1, which are known carcinogens, group 2A, which are probable carcinogens, group 2B, which are possible carcinogens, and group 3, which are not classifiable. So starting off with group 1, which are the known carcinogens, these include smoking, alcohol, asbestos, and that's right, processed meats. So think about that. They have processed meats together with smoking. I mean, that was rather surprising to me and a little scary. So the next time you want to have that extra piece of sausage or that pepperoni pizza, something to keep in mind. Now, moving on to group 2A, which are the probable carcinogens, these include red meat and glyphosate. And for those of you who do not know what glyphosate is, it's found in some forms of weed killer. And you've all seen the TV commercials with the lawsuits because of the glyphosate or the weed killer causing lymphoma or cancer. So that's right. They have it there on the list with red meat. So also rather surprising and a little bit scary. Now, in the group 2B, which are the possible carcinogens, these include gasoline, pickled vegetables, and aspartame. And those of you who do not know what aspartame is, that's the beverage sweetener found in diet soda and in other forms of beverages. So, it's known as a possible carcinogen. And then the not classifiable in group 3, these include tea, coffee, and fluorescent light exposure. And before we move on, if you enjoy videos like this, if you like to learn, then consider subscribing and check out some of my other videos. All right, so according to the World Health Organization, also the World Cancer Research Fund, and the American Institute for Cancer Research, they say that the evidence is convincing that processed meat increases the risk of colorectal cancer and red meat has a probable increased risk of colorectal cancer. There are also many other studies suggesting a link between red meat or processed meat and colorectal cancer, but just know that these are all based on observational studies. Now, as far as randomized data is concerned, we do have the Women's Health Initiative study, which is a randomized controlled dietary modification trial, basically looking at a low-fat diet and the risk of colorectal cancer. Once again, the risk of colon cancer and rectal cancer. And patients were followed for 8.1 years. And the conclusion of this trial was that it did not reduce the risk of colorectal cancer. But just know that there are some drawbacks here. And the main one is that it did not specifically study processed meat and red meat. So, we have to take it with a grain of salt, and that the reduction in meat intake in this trial was low, approximately 1.4 fewer servings per week. So after dissecting this trial, I really don't think it's a good measure as to determine if red meat or processed meats increase or decrease the risk of colon cancer. And I also found that the American Society of Clinical Oncology had an abstract of a meta-analysis performed from studies between 1990 and 2024. And their conclusion was that red meat and processed meat significantly increases the risk of colorectal cancer. So here you have a little bit more information. All right, so after reviewing the data, what is the bottom line? Well, there is enough evidence that strongly suggests that both processed meat and red meat both increase the risk of colorectal cancer. Now, it's important to know that this is all based on observational data. So not the best type of data, but there is an overwhelming amount of observational data coming to this conclusion. So overall, the recommendation is to limit processed and red meat intake. Now, I'll tell you what I usually do is I really try to avoid processed meats and I try to limit red meat. So with that being said, I hope you found this educational. If you did, please drop a like, leave a comment. I'm really interested in knowing what you think about all this, and I'll catch you on one of my other videos.